Hello everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah. Here we're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Beis, and we'll be learning today Mitzvah Hashem, Daf Lamed Zayin Amid Beis. So we're still learning Hilchos Beis HaKnesses, and we are still in Siman Kuf Nun Gimel Sif Ches. So I don't know exactly how many shiurim we've had on. I'm sorry, did I say Sif Ches? I meant Sif Zayin. So I don't know how many shiurim we've had over here on Sif Zayin, but we've had quite a few shiurim already. On Siman Kuf Nun Gimel Sif Zayin, this has turned out to be a very, very complex Sif. And today, Mitzvah Hashem, we're finally going to conclude Sif Zayin. So we have to get through this Ramah here on Lamed Zayin Amud Beis, which actually turns out, as has been with the rest of the Sif, this Ramah turns out to be a somewhat complex Ramah. So there are two concepts that we just need to give a little bit of a hakdama to. The first one is the concept of hachraza. Literally, hachraza means to call something out, to make announcements, to publicize something. There are different times when Beis Din or the tzibur are charged with the responsibility to sell something, either on behalf of the tzibur or on behalf of some other entity. For example, sometimes Beis Din is required to sell the assets of Yisayimim. You have Yisayimim, you have orphans, and they're not capable of handling their own affairs. So sometimes an apotropos, either a guardian, a legally appointed guardian, or Beis Din is charged with the responsibility of handling the affairs of the Yisayimim, and sometimes they have to sell assets that belong to the Yisayimim. In such a case, Beis Din has to make a hachraza. Before they go ahead and they sell the asset, they have to announce and they have to publicize to the tzibur that these assets are going to be sold. What's the purpose of the achraza? The purpose is that publicize the sale so that people will see these assets that are for sale, and then there'll be competition, there'll be a bidding war to come and buy those assets, and in that way Beis Din could be assured that they'll get the highest price possible on behalf of the Yisayimim or on behalf of the tzibur. So the purpose of the hachraza is to ensure that we get the highest price possible for the assets that we're selling. That's the point of the hachraza. You have this also sometimes when Beis Din is selling the assets of a Baal Chayv. Ruvain owes money to Shimon, and now they're going to sell the assets of Ruvain so that Shimon should be able to collect. So again, there's a din of hachraza. If you're going to make a sale, don't make a fire sale and get 50 cents on the dollar. Make sure that you make a sale with proper publicity and proper hachraza so that people have time to see what's for sale, and there starts to be a competition, and you should get the highest price possible for the assets that you're selling. So that's the first concept that we need to know, the concept of hachraza. The second concept is the halacha of oinah. Now, the halacha of oinah's ksafim, oinah when it comes to financial matters, that's a din daraisa. The din daraisa of oinah is that when you sell something, whenever a sale is made. Now, I'm using the term whenever quite loosely. It's not really whenever. There's a lot of details that go into this. But when somebody sells something, there's a din of oinah. The din of oinah is, let's say somebody sells something and he overcharges for what he sold. So it depends how much he overcharged. If he overcharged more than a sixth of the proper price, so then there's a halacha that sometimes the sale is not considered a binding sale. The sale could be annulled, and you'll undo the sale. The seller will have to take the item that he sold back, and he'll have to return the money if he overcharged more than a sixth. The same thing is true in the reverse. If he sold it and the person that paid for it underpaid by more than a sixth, so also the sale could be annulled, we'll undo the sale, and we'll reverse the sale. If the discrepancy between the proper price and the sale price was exactly a sixth, so then it gets a little bit more complicated. Then maybe you leave it the way it is. But the halachas of oinah are not simple. But this is the concept of oinah, that if you overcharged, underpaid for something, if it's more than a sixth, then it could be a bittul mekach. We could annul the sale, and we have to give back. We have to reverse the sale. Now, over here, on the top line of Lamed Zayin Amud Beis, we have the Ramah in the context of what we have been learning when it comes to the sale of either a Beis HaKnesses or other Dvarim Shebikdusha. So, we have seen that there are times when the tzibur is allowed to sell a Beis HaKnesses. There are times when a tzibur is not allowed to sell a Beis HaKnesses. So, for example, we said that when it comes to the Beis HaKnesses of a kfar, if we have a Beis HaKnesses, a shul in a kfar, in a small town, and let me remind everyone, we said that when we talk about a kfar, a small town, we're not talking about the size of the population, we're not talking about the square miles of the city. What we're talking about is this town, is it a destination unto itself? Is it a place where people come from the wider Jewish world to come spend time in this destination? Is it a town where there's a significant marketplace? Is it a town where there's a gadol? Is it a town where there's a rebbe? In that case, the town is a destination. That's not a kfar, that's a krach. In the context of these halachas, we would call that a Beis HaKnesses of a krach, a Beis HaKnesses of a large city. In that case, the population of the city has no right to sell the shul, because that shul was built adaita de kala olam kulei. That shul was built for the wider Jewish world, and the townspeople are not the bailim of the Beis HaKnesses who are empowered to sell it. Masha'enke a bezdin shel kfar, if you're talking about a Beis not a Beis Din, a Beis HaKnesses. When it comes to a Beis HaKnesses shel kfar, a shul in a small town that's not a destination city, it's a place where people are not coming from the wider Jewish world. In that case, the townspeople have the right to sell the shul. Why? Because it's their shul. It wasn't built adaita de kala olam kulei. That shul was built for their needs and for their purposes. If they don't need it anymore, they have the right to sell it. Not only did we see that they have the right to sell it, but we saw that if they sell it in the proper manner, if they sell it al das zayin tuve ya'ir b'may ben anshe ya'ir, if they sell it so that the sale is handled by the zayin tuve ya'ir, by the board that's empowered to do such things, and the board does it b'may ben anshe ya'ir with the consultation of the townsfolk, so then we said not only do they have the right to sell it, but they could even take the proceeds of the sale and they could be married it from its kedusha. They could take the money, and the money will no longer have Kedushas Beis HaKnesses. They could go use it for chulin. They could make a shul barbecue with the proceeds of the sale. So now, says the Ramah like this, Kol davar shebikdusha. Whenever we're talking about such a davar shebikdusha, for example, a Beis HaKnesses, shenimkar, and we're talking in a place where it may be sold, where the people are empowered to make the sale, umuter l'shanoisai, and when they make the sale, they have the right to level down, to downgrade the kedusha of the money. So, for example, this would be the Beis HaKnesses of a kfar, the Beis HaKnesses of a small town. The townsfolk have the right to sell it. So that's a davar shebikdusha shenimkar. They're allowed to sell it. And if the sale is done by the zayin tuve ya'ir b'may ben anshe ya'ir, muter l'shanoisai, they're allowed to level down the kedusha of the proceeds. So says the Ramah, in such a case, kol davar shebikdusha, wherever you're dealing with the davar shebikdusha, shenimkar, where it may be sold, and not only that, umuter l'shanoisai, and you're allowed to change the level of kedusha of the proceeds, you can even level it down. In that case, says the Ramah, nimkar, you could make the sale beloy hachroza. In that case, you do not need hachroza. So what's the point of the Ramah? What's the chiddush of the Ramah? Well, you're going ahead and you're selling a Beis HaKnesses that's tzibur shegelt. You're going ahead, you're selling a Beis HaKnesses. This is an asset that belongs to the town. It's a tzibur dika asset. It's not a private asset. There would be very strong reason to feel that when you're selling an asset that belongs to the tzibur, you have to do hachraza to make sure that when you sell it, you get the proper amount of money in return for the sale. Says the Ramah, if we're dealing about something, let's say, like the Beis HaKnesses of a kvar, where the townspeople are authorized to make the sale, and not only are they authorized to make the sale, But in some instances, if it was sold by the Zayin Tuvei Ir, by Ma'ibed Anshe Ir, they're even allowed to level down the Kedusha. What does that show you? What that shows you is that they're mamish the bailim. It's as if they're selling their own thing. We don't look at it so much that they're selling something that belongs to the tzibur. And therefore, they don't even need hachraza. The way the Mishnah Berurah is going to say it is, not only do they not need hachraza, really, if they wanted to, they could give away the Beis HaKnesses with a matana. If they want to give the Beis HaKnesses, there was a long-serving shamish in the shul. And now they decided that shul is no longer needed, and they go ahead and they authorize a sale of the Beis HaKnesses, the Zayin Tuvei Ir, B'Maimin Anshe Ir, in the Beis HaKnesses Shel Kvar, and they decide, you know what, we're not going to sell it, we're going to give it as a matana to the shamish. We're going to let the shamish and his family live there. You know what? They're allowed to do that. They can even give it away b'matana. So says the Mishnah Berurah, if they could give it away b'matana, if they could give it away and get nothing in return for it, so why do you need a hachraza? What's the worst case scenario? They're not going to make hachraza, and they're going to sell it for $500,000 instead of selling it for $750,000. So what? If they want to, they can even give it away. So you certainly don't need hachraza. So that's the first thing that the Ramah says here. Kol davar shebekdusha shenimkar. If it could be sold, umutal shanoisai. And not only are they allowed to sell it, but they can even downgrade the kedusha. So nimkar b'la hachraza. So that you could sell it even without a hachraza. Next halacha, says the Ramah, ve'ein boy oino. Now this is a little bit more complicated. Because I gave you the introduction, I told you what the halacha of oino is. But when it comes to the halacha of oina, there's a great difference between metaltalin, between movable property, and karkois, and real estate. What's the difference? The difference is that the rule is ein oina bekarkois. There is no oina by real estate. So you're selling a house, you're selling a lot, there is no oina. Now why is there no oina by karkois? So the very simple 30,000-foot explanation why there's no oina by karkois is because it is very difficult to assign a definite value to real estate. How do you assign a definite value to real estate? The value of real estate depends on so many things. It depends on inventory. It depends on location. And location changes drastically 1 year to the next. Right now, people are moving in, then people are moving out. There's in the Jewish community, it could be that you're in a state where there's what do they call it? Education choice in education, and the state is giving a subsidy for tuition. Boom! All of the houses in that neighborhood go up in value because Yiddish families with Kenai Nahar, a lot of kids, they want to move there because they get a break in tuition. Then the state legislature comes along and cancels the school choice. Boom! The value of the real estate goes down. So it's very, very difficult to assess a true value to real estate. Since it's so difficult to address you could address a value today. You could go bring in a professional appraiser and get a professional appraisal. Fine. So that's today. But next week it may very easily change. Next year it could certainly change. Not only that, bring in 5 appraisers and you're going to get 5 different values. So because it's so difficult to assess a true value to real estate, there's no din of oina by karkois. A guy, you'll come and you'll say, I overpaid. You overpaid? What? For you Badafka wanted to live on that block because your wife has her best friend that lives on the block. So for you, it was worth a lot more. Now you're coming and you're complaining that you're overpaid because your wife just found out that her best friend's husband just got a Stella in Timbuktu. So they're moving next week. So suddenly the value went down for you. So now it's shot that you overpaid? No, you wanted to overpay because for you it was worth more. So real estate is too complex and therefore ein oina bekarkois. Comes along the Ramah, and the Ramah says over here, when you're selling a Beis HaKnesses, if it's a Beis HaKnesses that you're empowered to sell, and not only are you empowered to sell, but you're even empowered to downgrade the level of kedusha of the proceeds, in that case, number one, you could sell it without a hachraza. Since it's yours, you don't have to make hachraza. We're not so concerned that you have to make sure that you get the right amount of money because you could even give it away. Second, there's no din oina. Now wait a minute. Ein oina bekarkois. Of course there's no din oina. If we're talking about selling a basic knesses, we're talking about selling real estate. Why would I think that there is Ainah? So the Mishnah Berurah is going to explain that there is a reason you might have thought that there should be Ainah. What's that reason? Because there's another halacha that we have, and that is, let's say somebody appoints somebody as a shliach, as an agent, to go sell his real estate. Sometimes there's a halacha that when a shliach makes a sale on your behalf, the dinim of Ainah are applied differently. I told you at the outset that the magic number when it comes to Ainah is a sixth. If the discrepancy in the sale price, but the discrepancy between the sale price and the true value is more than a sixth, then we could be mavatal the mekach, we could reverse the mekach, and the sale is undone. Not so when there's an agent. When there's an agent involved, when there's a shliach involved, then sometimes, even if the discrepancy was a very, very small amount, I could also be mavatal the mekach. Why could I be mevatel the mekach? Because I could turn around and I could say, when I made you a shliach, I didn't make you a shliach to hurt me. I only made you a shliach to help me. I didn't make you a shliach to hurt me. So if you went ahead and you sold my asset for less money than it was worth, so then your shlichus is not a shlichus. Suddenly we don't look at it that you're acting as my true shliach anymore. We're mevatel the shlichus. Forget about being mevatel the sale. We're being mevatel the shlichus. How are we mevatel the shlichus? Because I only made you a shliach to help me. I didn't make you a shliach to hurt me. You might think that the same thing is true over here. If you're going ahead and you're selling an asset on behalf of the tzibur, maybe the tzibur could turn around and say, yeah, it's true, ein Ainah b'karkois. Usually when it comes to real estate, there's no Ainah. But over here, forget the halacha of Ainah. You're a shliach to sell the asset of the tzibur. If you sold the asset of the tzibur for too little money, so maybe now there's a din Ainah, because the tzibur could turn around and say, I made you a shliach to help me, I didn't make you a shliach to hurt me. Says the Rambam, no, there's no din Ainah. Again, why is there no din Ainah? Because you're not a shliach for the tzibur. You're selling your own asset. And again, you're allowed to give away the asset even for nothing if you want to give the asset away. So we're not going to be mevatel the shlichus because you didn't get enough money for it. So those are the halachas that the Ramah says here. Kol davar shebekdusha shenimkar mutar l'shanoisai nimkar b'lo yachraza ve'ein bo Ainah. Aval, however, continues the Ramah, middle of the second line, and he says, Aval, however, davar she'aser l'shanoisai l'kedusha kala. But when you're making a sale, and it's a type of sale that you don't have complete authority over. So, for example, maybe it's a sale that you're allowed to make, but you're not allowed to downgrade the kedusha of the proceeds. If it's a sale that you don't have complete authority, you don't have complete power in this sale, and you're not allowed to downgrade the kedusha, tzarech hachraza. Now you have to make hachraza before you make this sale, because over here your kedusha is limited. For example, you don't have the right to downgrade the kedusha, and if you don't have the right to downgrade the kedusha, so then certainly we have to make sure that you get enough money, because you got to get a proper amount of proceeds for the sale and maintain all of that money as the same kedusha as the item that you're selling. And the Mishnah Berurah is going to bring down an example of such a case that will portray this and illustrate this beautifully. And on that vein, take a look in the parentheses over here at the end of the sif. He brings this down from the Rashba, Chuvas HaRashba, Siman Tuf Reish Yud Daled, which is a mistake actually. It's Siman Tuf Reish Yud Zayin. And now we'll go to the Mishnah Berurah to gain an even better understanding of this. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol na'eh b'dvaro. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Mem Daled. Now, the way the Mishnah Berurah is going to approach this Ramah is a little bit backwards from the way that I just explained it. In other words, the Mishnah Berurah is really going to start with the Chuvas HaRashba that addresses the second case of the Ramah. Aval davar she'aser l'shanoisei l'kedusha kala, when you're not allowed to downgrade the kedusha of the item that you're selling, then tzarech hachraza. The Mishnah Berurah is going to start us from there, because this all flows from the Rashba. And that's the case that the Rashba really explains. So let's take a look here, a nice cut mem daled. Shenimkar umutal shanoisai v'chulei. Pirish davar zeh, the explanation of these halachas here in the Ramah at the end of Siv Zayin, who is al pi hamavur berashba. It's based on what's explained in the Rashba. What's the case that the Rashba is addressing? Be'echad shetziva, when a person makes a donation to the tzibur, he donates a house to the tzibur. Be'echad shetziva, and he commands when he makes the donation, that this house should serve as a means to support aniyim. It doesn't mean that aniyim should live there. It means I'm giving this house as an asset to the tzibur, so that the tzibur should use this asset to support aniyim. How? I'm donating the house to the tzibur, rent the house out. And the peiros, that means the income that comes off the rental, should be used to support the aniyim. The aniyim will eat the peiros. They'll eat the income that comes off of the asset. And the donor says, V'lo yasu b'nei hakahal shum havracha. And he says straight out when he makes the donation, I'm donating this asset to the tzibur so that the tzibur should use it to support aniyim. And I am saying straight out that the tzibur is not authorized to go ahead and sell the asset and remove the asset from being used as support for the aniyim. Havracha means chasing away. I'm asering the tzibur. I'm giving this asset as a donation to the tzibur for the support of the aniyim, and I'm saying up front that the tzibur is not authorized to chase it away, meaning they're not authorized to go ahead and sell it and no longer use it to support aniyim. That's what I'm giving it for, and that's what it has to remain for in perpetuity. V'achakach, but then later on, Ratzu hakol limkar abayis, comes a point in time where the tzibur wants to sell the house, v'liknois padamim, and to purchase with the proceeds davar acher, something else. They want to buy something else where the peiros will be used to support aniyim. So I can give you a simple example. A donor donated a house to the tzibur, rent out the house, and use the rental income to support aniyim, and you're not allowed, it has to be in perpetuity. But now what happens? The neighborhood changes. So it used to be that where this house was, the income of the house was $3,000 a month. Now, it turns out, 30 years later, that the house is on the wrong side of the tracks. Now, the income of the house is going to be $800 a month. I want to sell the house, and I want to use it to buy an asset closer to the right side of town, where the rental income is going to be a lot better. It's a very, very, very valid argument. And this is not havracha. They're not going ahead and canceling out the support of the aniyim. Quite the opposite. They're using the asset that was donated to support the aniyim. They're continuing to use the value of that asset to support aniyim. And adarabah, they're going to improve the support of the aniyim. So in that case, they're allowed to make the sale, but they're not allowed to change. It's like what the Ramah says over here. Avol davar she'asor l'shanoisai. But they're not allowed to change it. They're not allowed to sell the asset that was donated 30 years ago and say, now we're going to take the proceeds and we're going to buy an Aron Kodesh. They're not allowed to say we're going to take the proceeds and we're going to use it for the Oitzes Svarim to buy Svarim. That they're not allowed to do. The donor gave it in perpetuity to support aniyim. They have to weiter use it to support aniyim. So this is a case of davar she'asor l'shanoisai. This is a case where they're not allowed to change it. So let's see what the Rashba says. Continues the Mishnah Berurah. Because of a Rashba, in this case, the Rashba says, Ditzrichem hachraza b'shas hamechira. Over here, they have to make a hachraza. When they want to go ahead and they want to sell the house that was donated 30 years ago, they have to publicize it. They have to look in halacha to see if they have to publicize it for 30 days or 60 days. There are different cases in Choshe Mishpat, different times when you're mechuyev to make achraza. Sometimes you have to make achraza shloshim yom. Sometimes you have to make achraza shishim yom. But you got to make a achraza to make sure you get enough money for the sale of the asset. The kevan shetziva shebnei hakol lo yasu avracha, because since the donor spelled out specifically when he made the donation that the tzibur is not allowed to divest the asset from its use to support aniyim, so that means that the tzibur is definitely not allowed to take the asset and give it away as a matana, right? They can't give it to the long-serving shamish of the shul as a matana. No, this asset is here for supporting aniyim. And if so, hu adin de'en rasham lim karbala achraza. It then follows that they cannot sell it without a hachraza and risk not making enough money for the sale of the asset. The kol shaloi yachrizu, because as long as they don't make a hachraza, anu royim, we look at the sale kilu moizle bekarkazu, as if they're selling the asset cheap. The dilma im yachrizu, because maybe if they would have made a hachraza, hayanim tzamishi yiten beyoker, somebody would have paid more money. Umali noistim kula b'matana, and what's the difference if they give away the whole asset b'matana? Umali moizle b'miktasa, and what's the difference if they sell it cheap? So they're giving away 20% of it at a matana. Ad kan dvarav. That's the end of the Rashba. So, what's the Rashba saying? The Rashba is saying, here you have a case where the tzibur has an asset that they are not allowed to sell and change what the asset is being used for. They have a house that was donated to the tzibur, and it was specifically donated for the support of aniyim. And therefore, they are not allowed to use those proceeds or to use that asset for anything else. They're allowed to sell it if they will continue to go use the asset to the support of aniyim. So they could sell this house and buy another house. Maybe they can even sell the house, take the proceeds, and put it in an annuity. If they have an annuity that's going to make as much money or more money. So again, they're using it in an annuity to go and sell it for the purpose of supporting aniyim. But they're not allowed to divest it and change it from that purpose. In that case, the Rashba says, you want to sell it, you need hachraza. Why? Because you have to get 100% of the value. If you only get 90% of the value, then guess what? You gave 10% away, b'matana. You're not allowed to give 10% away, b'matana. The donor said you're not allowed to do any havracha. You're not allowed to divert any of it for the support of aniyim. If you end up giving away 10% b'matana because you only got 90% of the value, so then guess what? You did havracha on 10%. 10% of the asset you're no longer using for the support of aniyim. Das zok the Rashba. That's the case of the Rashba. That's the psak of the Rashba. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Va'ata nefaresh divrei Ramah. Now I could explain the words of the Ramah that all flow from this Rashba. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Va'ata nefaresh divrei Ramah. Kol davar v'chulei u'botel l'shanaisai. Anytime you're making a sale, that you're allowed to make the sale, and you're allowed to change the proceeds. You're allowed to use them for something else other than what they were originally intended for. Hainu, what would that case be? Hainu shahamoichrim yesh lehem rishus b'lav hachi lasais b'davar nimkar mashayirtzu. That would be a case where the people that are making the sale are authorized to do with the item that they're selling whatever they want. What would a case like that be? Well, a basic nesses of a kfar, where you're selling it bezayin tuvia ir b'maimin anshe. You can do with it whatever you want. You want to give it away b'matana, you can give it away b'matana. So then, says the Mishnah Berurah, lo bo achraza. That's the first halach of the Ramah. In such a case, you don't need achraza. Because let's say, worst case scenario, because you didn't make achraza, you end up selling it cheap. And you sell it for 50 cents on a dollar. So you're only getting 50% value. We don't care. To me, is that worse than if they would give it away b'matana? And they're allowed to give it away b'matana. So then you don't need achraza. Says the Mishnah Berurah Vayter is cut memhei, ve'ein ba'ayna, and there's also no ayna. Says the Mishnah Berurah Mairi, over here, the Ramah is talking about b'mechiras karka ubatim, when you're selling real estate, either land or houses. Umishum she'enan ola karkois, and halach is enan ola karkois. Now, the Mishnah Berurah is bothered, so then why does the Ramah have to tell me that there's ein ba'ayna? Of course there's ein ba'ayna. There's ein ayna b'karkois. Of course there's no ayna. Explains the Mishnah Berurah, v'ashme'inon, and what the Ramah is teaching me is, the loy tema, that you should not say, the hevik kishliach, that the people that are making the sale are acting as agents for the tzibur, in which case, ta'afilu b'kolshu hu mikroi bottle, which usually we say that the halachas of a nah are not applied in the normal way, and you don't have to worry about a discrepancy in the sale price of a shtus, of a sixth, even less than a sixth, even in a kolshu, even in a minute discrepancy, the sale would be bottle. Why? The yakal leimar, because the selling entity could say, l'takune shedartich, I made you an agent for my tikkun, for my betterment, v'loy la'avuse, and not for corruption. I didn't make you an agent to hurt me. That's not the case over here. Over here, since it's a sale that they're completely authorized to make, we don't look at it as they're shluchim for the tzibur. We look at it as if they're selling their own item. But if they would be selling movable property, over there certainly would be a halacha of einah, because there's always einah b'metaltalin. That's the way the Mishnah Berurah learns. Okay. If you want to see a different pirush, you can look at the Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan learns this according to the Taz, which is quite different. But we're learning the Mishnah Berurah. Then, Ois Kot Memvav, the second halacha of the Ramah was, Aval Davar She'asa L'Shanoisai, but where the people that are making the sale are not completely authorized. They're not authorized to change what the proceeds are being used for. Kain Sarch Loimar, the Mishnah Berurah says that's the way the text of the Ramah should read, and that's what we have. V'hainu, in this case, is Kedila El B'Shem HaRashba, the case that I told you in the name of the Rashba, where the donor gave a house to be used to support Aniyim, and now the tzibur is going to sell the asset and buy a different asset to support Aniyim. They're not allowed to change it. They have to sell the asset to purchase another asset to support Aniyim, because that's what the donor specified when he made the donation. In that case, the Rashba said, Shetzarech achraza. In that case, you need achraza, Kedei shelo yimachal b'zoil, so that you shouldn't sell it for too low a price and lose part of the value. Umemelo yesh einah gamkein va'afilu b'karkois. And in this case, says the Mishnah Berurah, the Ramah is telling you that there would be a din of einah even by karka. How is that? Ein einah b'karkois. But over here, the reason there's einah on karka is not really because of the din of einah. The specific din of einah doesn't apply to karkois. But over here, you can't undersell it, because the donor specified that every penny of the value of the asset must be used to support Aniyim. So if you sell it for 75 cents on a dollar, you're robbing him. You're taking 25% of the value and divesting it. You're doing havracha. You're removing it from its intended purpose of supporting Aniyim. So that is yesh einah. You have no right to undersell the item. Not because of dinei einah, but because of your achrayus to the tzibur. And he brings this down from the Prima Gadim. In this case, you need achraza, but dafka bekarka. The din of achraza is only when you're selling real estate. When you sell metaltalin, movable objects, movable property, you never need achraza k'de'isa b'chayshem mishpat siman kuftes and in the Taz. Now, interesting, the reason why you don't have achraza by metaltalin is because achraza by metaltalin could be dangerous. If you announce the movable property that you're selling, then bad actors might find out the metaltalin that you're selling, and they might target it for theft. That's why metaltalin doesn't have a din of hachraza. You know, we're talking over here about the halachas of the achrayas to the tzibur. I can't resist. It was just recently, I had yahrzeit for my father, Rabbi Siman Rameir, alav shalom. I can't resist, even though it's a little bit late, but I can't resist. I have to tell over the story. My father, alav shalom, was the gabbai in the Sephardish Yeshul in Borough Park, 40th Avenue and 46th Street, for many, many, many years. He was the treasurer and also the gabbai. And one of his responsibilities was selling the aliyahs on Yom Tov. Now, my father, he was born in Salish town at the base of the Carpathian mountains not far from Munkach. And the Kedoshei Salish, the Nazis, Yimach Shemam Zichram, came into Salish right before Shavuos in 1944, and most of the people that have Yartzeit, the Kedoshei Salish, went to the gas chambers Nebuch on Shavuos, most of them. First day Shavuos, second day Shavuos. My father had Yartzeit, second day Shavuos. So now he was in a little bit of a bind. He's charged with responsibility to sell the aliyahs, but at the same time, he's a chiyuv on Shavuos, so he needs an aliyah. So what my father, Shalom, used to do was, he used to go to one of his friends who was a well-off individual, and he used to tell him, look, I have Yartzeit, so I'm going to bid on an aliyah. And he would only bid on he wouldn't go to get maftir, because maftir is a chashav aliyah. He wouldn't go for shlishi, it's a chashav aliyah. He was a tremendous anav. He would go for chamishi, even though there's an Indian maftir by a Yartzeit. But my father felt that it was more important, especially as an officer in the shul and a guy with the shul, to chas v'shalom not look like he's taking any advantage of his position. So he would bid on chamishi, and he would tell this chaver of his, I want you to bid me up. So I'm going to bid, and you bid against me. And when you think it's appropriate that you should stop the bidding, you'll stop the bidding. So every year they would argue with my father, and they would say, look, take an aliyah. You have Yartzeit. Take an aliyah. You want to make a donation to the shul, make a donation to the shul. But my father said, I can't do that. It's not fair. It's not fair. There's always a bid and a give and take. And it's not fair for me to just decide how much I should pay. Again, then I'm taking advantage of my position. So he would always tell this fellow to bid him up. One year, the chevra in the shul decided that they're not having it. So they decided that they're not going to bid. So, okay, they decided they're not going to bid. So my father got up, and my father said, Chai dollar chamishi, zwei mal chai chamishi, drei mal chai chamishi, drei mal chai tzemerish, vier mal chai chamishi, fünf mal chai chamishi, zehn mal chai chamishi. And he kept going higher and higher and higher, and he wouldn't stop because nobody was bidding against him. Finally, one of the guys in the shul gave a clap on the table and said, Genug schon, it's enough already. Zachaloi, take it. So I asked my father, Shalom, afterwards, I said, I don't understand. L'chari, you could solve the problem very easily. Just decide that the second day Shavuos, you're not going to sell the aliyahs. Let the Gabbai Sheni sell the aliyahs, the second day Shavuos, and you'll bid on the aliyah like everybody else. My father said, I can't. So I asked him, why not? He said, because I'm the Gabbai Rishon. I have an achrayus to the tzibur. When I sell the aliyahs, I look around the room. I know who the big spenders are, and I look at them like, no. He says, so I have an achrayus to the tzibur, and I try to make as much money for the tzibur as I can. I don't know if Yenim is going to do that. I have no right to give up my achrayus to the tzibur and give it over to somebody else. He's Zichroi Baruch, the Shama should have an aliyah. Okay, now that I took up some time on that, let's go a little bit weiter. Let's see Sif Ches, 2 lines to the bottom and middle of the line, here in Shulchan Aruch, Lamed Zayin Amud Beis. Says the Mechaber. Now, the truth is that this halacha needs a little bit of a hakdama also, a simple hakdama. Kuf Nun Gimel, Sif Chaf Aleph. No, that's not the right. Mara Mokum. Kuf Nun Daled. Kuf Nun Daled. Sorry, bear with me 1 second. Oh, yeah, it is. Okay. So, if you take a look at Mem Amid Aleph, Siman Kuf Nun Gimel Sif Chaf Aleph, 2 lines off the bottom of the page in the Shulchan Aruch, on Mem Amud Aleph, last word on the line. The Mechaber says, Ein liknois mi'ilim. You're not allowed to purchase wrappings for the Sefer Torah. So, for example, something that you're going to use as a Sefer Torah mantle. Now, obviously, we're not talking about a beautiful embroidered Sefer Torah mantle. You need something to wrap a Sefer Torah in. So you want to buy a bolt of beautiful fabric, maybe, to use it to wrap up a Sefer Torah. Ein liknois me'ilim. You should not buy wrappings shenishtabesh behem hedyet, that were used for non-kedusha purposes, that were used for divrei chulin. So let's say you have a gorgeous piece of fabric. It was a tablecloth. You have a gvir, you have a very wealthy person, and he had mamish, a stunningly beautiful tablecloth. But it was a tablecloth. Now you need something to wrap up a Sefer Torah, and you find out that this gvir is selling his tablecloth. Now this tablecloth is not a stam tablecloth. This tablecloth is mamish. It's a piece of fabric from the Scottish mills in Scotland that make the most beautiful fabrics in the world, and it's made out of who knows what, and it's gorgeous, but it was a tablecloth. Says the Mechaber, you're not allowed to use it. The Mechaber says, if it was used for tzarchei hedyet, you can't use it to wrap up a Sefer Torah. Why? Because that's not pakavadik for the Sefer Torah. And in a little bit, it's like the Sefer Torah doesn't take the gvir's tables seconds. B'makom hashiris, ein aniyus b'makom hashiris. You don't use for a Sefer Torah the tablecloth that the gvir got tired of. So now we'll use it for a Sefer Torah. No, even though it sounds like Mal and B'kodesh, sounds like you're taking the tablecloth and you're elevating it in Kedusha, but that's a bizayon for the Sefer Torah. For the Sefer Torah, you buy a brand new bolt of fabric, something gorgeous, and you have it embroidered and you make something beautiful. You don't take the gvir's seconds, his used tablecloth, to be the me'il for the Sefer Torah. So what do we see? We see that it's not always a davar pashut to take something that was used for chulin and now use it for kodesh. Against that backdrop, we could understand what the Mechaber says here. Says the Mechaber Sivches, Bonu bayis stam. Somebody built a house. So Lakewood is expanding, Tom's River, Manchester, and a builder went into Manchester, and he built a beautiful house. For what? Intending to sell it as a house. Now, somebody bought the house on this side, somebody bought the house on that side, somebody bought all the houses across the street, and now they wake up and they say, we don't want to walk 20 minutes to the nearest shul. We want a shul here. That house is still for sale. We'll use that house. We'll buy that house. We'll make it a Beis HaKnesses. Says the Mechaber, Bonu bayis stam, if a house was built, stam, v'higdishu achakach leBeis HaKnesses, and then they go ahead and they're magdish it to be a Beis HaKnesses, dinoi ke Beis HaKnesses. Yes, that works. You could take a house that was built to be a stam house, and now you could go ahead and you could say that I want it to be a Beis HaKnesses, and it's going to have all the dinim of a Beis HaKnesses. Now, caveat, says the Mechaber, aval, but remember, einoi kadosh ad sheyispalalu bai. It's not invested with the Kedusha of the Beis HaKnesses until people actually come and daven there. So what do we have over here? We have a house that was built stam. It was just built to be a house. Now the people went ahead and they decided that they want to be magdish it for a Beis HaKnesses. So they go in and they say, okay, we're buying this house and we're going to use it as a shul. But nobody davened in it yet. So first, says the Mechaber, you should know you could do that. And the Mishnah Berurah is going to explain that what this means is you could do it even lechatchila, even though maybe you might think there's a problem of elevating a dvar chulin into a dvar kedusha, because this house was not built to be a Beis HaKnesses, it was built to be a house. Doesn't matter. You could buy the house and you could turn it into a Beis HaKnesses, but it doesn't get Kedusha's Beis HaKnesses. It's not invested with Kedusha's Beis HaKnesses until a minion actually comes and davens in it. That it doesn't get. And continues the Mechaber, and he says, the truth is that halacha is afilu im bina'uhu l'shem beis hakneses. That halacha applies even if you built a building to be a shul. You went there and you built a shul, it's not invested with Kedushas Beis HaKnesses until a minion comes and actually davens in it. Now, caveat, it depends how the money was raised. We'll see that in the Mishnah Berurah. But right now, we're not talking about that. We're not talking about it. What we're talking about now is a building was built as a house. You might have thought that since it wasn't built to be a Beis HaKnesses, maybe it can't become a Beis HaKnesses. Maybe in order to invest a house or a building with Kedushas Beis HaKnesses, maybe it has to be built specifically for that purpose. Maybe otherwise you can't invest it with Kedushas Beis HaKnesses, even if a minion davens there. Says the Mechaber, no. You built a house to be a house. You could invest it with Kedushas Beis HaKnesses. If you daven over there, the Kedusha will stick. It will become a Beis HaKnesses, but the Kedusha doesn't come until you actually daven there. Not only that, but even when you build a building mitchila to be a Beis HaKnesses, the Kedusha doesn't come until people actually daven there. So those are the first two halachas we're going to see here in Sivches. Again, banu bayis stam v'gdishu akakas lebeis HaKnesses, dino kebeis HaKnesses. Aval leina kodesh hachi yispalu bay. But it's not invested with Kedusha until you daven there. And afilu im bina'uhu l'shem beis haknesses. The truth is that halacha is even if you built it mitchila to be a beis haknesses, it still isn't invested in kedusha until a minion davens there. Says the Mishnah Berurah. Do we have time? You know what? No, we don't. Okay, I'm going to stop over here at Ois Kat Mem Ches. Mir Hashem will continue next time. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. Discuss limud HaTorah Shimi Megan against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbe Hashem should send Yeshua's Refuah's Parnasset Shidduchim to those in need. We should be zoicha to see the Bias Goyel Tzedek b'mehera v'yameinu amen. Be well.